Welcome to the Parent Guide to GCSE podcast. Today's guest is Abby, who's often better known as Miss Tinks. She's a qualified but still practicing teacher and now spends much of her time working with children to encourage a growth mindset, help them cope with stress and encourage confidence in their amazing abilities. This was originally broadcast as a live Facebook event and it can still be found on the Parent Guide to GCSE Facebook page.
Evening, everybody. So we are back with the fourth in our series of Children's Mental Health Week conversations, and this evening we are talking about stress. So we have Miss Tinks with us. Abby, would you like to just do a quick intro, who you are, what you do?
Of course, yeah. So my name is Abby, but I run the business Miss Tinks. So I am a qualified primary school level teacher, but I tutor children from primary school and settling into high school and kind of that transitional period as well. The main thing, I am still teaching, so I'm still a practicing primary school teacher. So I kind of get to see the real school, the real life around school. I'm still very much involved with all of that. But the main thing that I do mostly kind of from home and around all of the other bits and pieces going on is I've studied personal development since I was 15 to get me through my GCSEs, which is nice and hopefully helpful for this evening somewhere along the lines. And so I turn sort of all the books and people I've listened to and courses I've done and things over the years into more sort of child-friendly, easier to understand trainings on things like stress, like we're going to talk about tonight, general neuroscience, growth mindset, self-talk, all that sort of thing.
Fabulous.
Awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, sounds fab. Have you got any good book recommendations for that kind of stuff? Just
I've got three here actually that I'll show you very, very quickly. So these were the three that I read first when I was doing my GCSEs. The first one, I apologise for the tattiness because they are well-loved copies. The first one is Attitude is Everything by Jeff Keller. It's a little bit philosophical, a little bit anecdotal, the stories and things in there. But the main message is all about how, it's your attitude and your perception of things constantly and how you choose to view things, and that triggers your responses. So I found that super, super useful. Another one that I absolutely loved was The Compound Effect by a man called Darren Hardy. He's very big personal development. Again, it's a very tatty copy, so I apologise. But this one kind of covers doing things in pockets of time, working smarter rather than working harder, and all that sort of thing, because I was helping my mum run her business when I was doing my GCSEs. My dad was very poorly. We were kind of balancing a lot, and I worked in pockets of time. And it was only through that book that I kind of got all that knowledge. And then the final one is I can never say his name, Shad Helmstetter's What to Say When You Talk to Yourself, which is a fabulous book. This is probably my latest read, and I keep picking it up and rereading it. And it's all about self-talk. And again, kind of linking the other two together in that it's all your perception and how you tell yourself to deal with things that makes a big difference. So they'd be my top three.
Fabulous.
Awesome. And all three that I haven't read yet, so they're going on my list.
There you go.
Excellent. Right.
So first question, it's maybe too big a question, but basically what is stress, and are some people more predisposed to it?
So stress essentially is a very kind of subconscious, unconscious, natural response to anything that your body perceives as unknown or that it's unsure of. You release it's a chemical response, so you release adrenaline into your body. The part of your brain that does this is called your amygdala, which for little ones, we refer it to your meerkat brain. So it's you have the meerkat always out looking for danger. Your amygdala's always out looking for danger. Sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, the more unknown situations you have, the more your amygdala will be on its guard. And we can't turn it off because obviously then when we're actually in danger, it wouldn't respond. But similarly, we can learn to control it and kind of reason with it a little bit better, the better we understand ourselves. So I wouldn't say people are more predisposed to it, but people deal with it in different ways and react differently, despite the fact that for all of us, it is just this chemical response to danger or what your brain perceives as dangerous.
I mean, the reason I ask it is because we've got 3 children. When the boys were the first children, obviously, and as a new parent, you stress and you worry, and I think that rubs off on the children, so they're a bit more on edge. With Ellie, who's now 12 and therefore enormous, but we were very relaxed with her, literally from day one, and I think that's manifested itself as she's grown up. She's just very chilled, doesn't stress, very different to how the boys were. Does it come from the parents? Does it?
Yeah, it's definitely a learnt behaviour, because obviously when children experience their newest unknowns, they're looking at their parents to see their response and looking at how they deal with the situation. I mean, a little anecdote from me. When I was 4, I experienced my first thunderstorm. We were on holiday in the caravan with my nana on my own, and she sobbed and screamed and wailed. So naturally, I sobbed and screamed and wailed. And ever since, I cannot stand it. Despite the fact as an adult, I reason with myself and go, you're inside, you're safe, etc., etc. I'm like, can't do it, don't like it, under the bed, curtains shut, you name it. And it's all a learned response. It's completely learned. So when, like you say, like with your first children as well, you kind of more sort them out, pick them up, like, try and perceive.
Get the antiseptic cream, whereas the younger one pops out and you're like, there's no blood, it's fine.
It's fine. Exactly.
We kind of get to enjoy that now that the other members of the family got younger kids. And they're busy sort of, stressing out. But just relax, don't worry about it. But they're not. They're all, oh my goodness.
Yeah. But it's all perceived, and obviously they look to you for that response. Then, so the child will look up to you and think, right, well, what are you going to do about it? Because that's exactly what I'll do about it, because I don't know what to do. I'm going to watch what you do. So yeah, it is very much learned behaviour.
So, given that it's learned behaviour, as parents, as the adults in the situation, it's kind of almost on us to learn some better strategies for dealing with stress, so that even if we are stressed, they can then watch us go, well, they're clearly in a stressful situation, but look, they're dealing with it, and here's how they're dealing with it. So that's how I'm going to deal with stressful situations. So in terms of coping strategies, in terms of kind of managing your stress levels, have you got any top tips for us?
Oh, well, I mean, I think the managing, like you say, is probably the way I would go with this, because you cannot completely stop stress from happening. You can avoid situations that would cause stress. You can, attempt to prevent as much as you can, and these things will still happen. But I think the main thing to note is it is a completely natural response. And when it happens, you just have to be mindful of, right, what can I control? What can I sort out? What can't I do anything about? And how am I going to deal with that? Do I avoid that completely? Then it doesn't happen again. Do I accept it and just accept that I'm always going to find that stressful and try and prevent it? It's all about prevention, really, and managing it, because we can't stop it altogether. It's just about having that kind of rational conversation with yourself and thinking, what can I do about this? How can I move forward? And go from there, really, rather than panicking, which is what most people do.
Well, yeah, we were speaking to a psychotherapist last night on the live, and she was talking about, she gave the example of the dentist, which always stresses me out. And she said she knows it makes her panic. So she'll talk to the dentist beforehand and say, I get really nervous about this stuff. It stresses me out. If I put my hand up, is it okay for you to just then stop? And because she knows she has that out, she's had that rational conversation with herself.
Yes.
And no, I can get out of this. Therefore, I can deal with the stress levels. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
With that, I'm going to go with teenagers at the moment. I know that you obviously spend a lot of time with younger children as well, but what's the biggest causes of stress to teenagers in this day and age?
Well, I mean, obviously, with everything going on at the moment, I feel like that's one of the most used phrases of the past 12 months, isn't it? With everything going on at the moment. I think, obviously, with teenagers generally, you've got those very real world pressures all of a sudden, where they're expected to make a lot of decisions that set them up for future life, for careers and things like that. And if they don't necessarily know what they want to do, obviously that's a lot of added pressure. And with the current situation, children are being asked to plan weeks, months, years ahead. And by 8 o'clock that night, Boris could have been on the TV and the whole world's changed again. And we're expecting them to make very big decisions with very little to go off at the moment and very little stability around what they want to do. And obviously another side pressure that's kind of always been there is everything going on with social media and what to read, what not to read, what to believe. There's a lot of pressure with younger ones. I mean, when I did my GCSEs, social media was it was new, so it was a very, very big thing. Now there's just so much of it and so many platforms, you don't even know where to start if you don't keep up to date with it all. So children and teenagers and, who are getting ready for their exams, they're not at school, so they're turning to social media more as a way of interaction. But then seeing somebody's got the latest this, such a body's wearing the latest that, and social media ultimately is only what people want you to see. It's not their whole life. It's not a true picture, but it feels like it's a true picture. And at the moment, that's all people are getting to see because they're not actually going out and interacting. So for the children, they've got all these big decisions in a completely warped sense of reality to try and make, which is quite scary. I thought my GCSEs were stressful, and I really do feel for children who are out there at the moment having to make these decisions because it must be terrifying.
Yeah, totally.
So basically, the older you get, the more responsibility, the more choices you've got to make, the more opportunity for stress, I suppose.
Oh, yes, most definitely. I mean, so theoretically, with the more you experience, the less you should get stressed. It kind of goes out the window because you bring new stresses into life, like you say, as you get older and you have more decisions to make, more pressure, more riding on the decisions. You become more emotionally resilient, which helps to a degree, but there will always be new things for you to experience that you don't know just yet. So I would agree.
Yeah, and then the peer pressure is a big thing. You wear your Spider-Man underpants to school in primary and nobody really bats an eyelid, but you do it in secondary and
exactly.
For a while.
Exactly. No, I agree.
From experience before you start.
I love that.
You were talking about the kind of, the Instagram versus reality kind of situation.
Very much.
And I mean, I've been doing some filming today. I've got a couple of lives, so I've got actual grown-up clothes on. If you see me any other time in the last year, I would have been wearing either joggy bottoms or pajama bottoms.
Yeah.
But have you got an iron shirt on and costume change? Nobody noticed.
Oh, you did. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
I love that.
Iron shirts. Goodness.
And I realised for the podcast, they're thinking what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't normally dress up. I have done today. And because we've done back-to-back live events, I did a costume change because that's what professionals do.
Well, see, he's going to peer pressure.
Yeah, there you go. It's that reality.
A couple of weeks ago, I had a hoodie on.
That is true. That is very true.
I love that.
Oh. So I'm going to get back on topic now. If you're concerned about your child's stress levels, if you're seeing, well, I guess where we'd start is what sort of signs might we see in a child who is possibly not managing their stress levels well enough, and then what kind of things can we do as parents to support them in putting strategies in place and stuff?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, the main kind of symptoms around stress are usually you kind of see a bit of a polarized scale. So children, especially younger, but to a degree as they get older, they kind of polarize into either super confident or completely withdrawn, don't want to engage, or very, over and under eating, over and under sleeping, being very focused, suddenly being very hard to motivate. And it's noticing those kind of changes because it could be kind of any element of their persona that all of a sudden you think actually that's not them, that's not what they would usually do. And the main kind of way to start it is just talking through it and saying, is there anything, I've noticed this, is there anything behind that, or is it me just being protective parent and kind of putting the onus on you and saying, I'm just looking out for you. Is there anything that's not feeling quite right? Can I do anything to help? And hopefully, I mean, you can, if they're reluctant, they aren't going to tell you, they aren't going to engage, and you can kind of send them the other way then, which is where the young adults feel like they can't cope and like they've nobody to talk to because it's adding more pressure to the situation. So I suppose it's noticing the changes and then coming to try and talk to them in a very non-pressurizing way, which is quite difficult, but they have to feel like they can come to you with anything, which obviously as a parent is usually the case, but then with teenagers it can be a very different case as well, can't it? You know, I mean, I was as a teenager was horrible. I was like, no, I'm fine, don't speak to me, not a problem, I can do it, I'll be fine. And then all of a sudden I'd kind of melt down and, you know, I'd go, Mom, fix it. And she'd be like, okay, come here, you know. So it would be kind of any subtle change, lots of discussion, keep it very open-ended. And then from there, you know, see what they suggest, because they do tend to have some children and young adults will say, actually, I really don't know what to do about the situation. And that might be where you talk to school or, you know, see if there's anybody else that you can reach out to and help. Whereas some of them will go, well, actually, do you know what? I just need a little bit of time, or I've nowhere at home to work. You know, one of the situations at the minute is working from home spaces and spaces to concentrate and learn and then all that kind of thing, you know. So bouncing around ideas that could work and strategies and being very positive about sorting it if they do say this is the problem or this is how I'm feeling. Because again, they're looking to you for that response. So by panicking and shutting down and you becoming stressed, they will do completely what you're doing. So you've kind of got to model that behaviour almost for them.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know if I'm a bit stressy, I'm trying to make the point of saying, I've had a really stressful day. I'm just going to go and have a bath and just have 20 minutes to myself. And then hopefully I'll be a human being again when I come downstairs. And if I have that conversation, then A, she knows I'm not being stressy with her and
me
and you.
Yeah.
And B, I'm communicating those strategies. So she's starting to think, oh, so okay, if I'm feeling stressed, there are things that I can do. And
definitely. Definitely, yeah.
In terms of exams, or not exams this year, who knows? That's probably the biggest, or the main cause of stress with students. Is there any strategies on the day of the exam, day of one of the exams? You're sitting there, you're stressing. Is there anything they can do to try and
kind of practical
steps, chill and try and get the best out of the exam rather than sitting there, you know, because if you go in stressed, it's not a good start, is it? You need to.
No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I was one of those people. So I went into my GCSEs and my A levels kind of, I've got this, I can do this, I've got this, and then sat down and the reality hits you and you kind of go, oh, this is actually happening. They're putting they're writing the type. Oh yeah, no, I'm being given a pen. Yeah, this is going ahead, you know. And I really started to panic at that point. And I think the main thing to remember that is a completely natural response. There's no point trying to mask it. There's no point trying to hide it or deny it. It is happening. You're going to have to do it. So again, it's a bit like that self-regulation and that self-talk of saying, well, actually, you've prepared for this. You've been revising. You've looked at the syllabus and you know what's likely to come up. What you don't have control over is exactly every single question. So don't stress about every single question because you don't know. And think about what you have controlled already. So I think, you know, obviously an element of leading up to the exam takes place, you know, is important on what happens with the morning as well. You know, think about all the prep that you've put in and kind of sit and go, right, well, that's how much I've done to get ready. I can't control where I'm going to be sat, if I'm going to be near a door, am I going to be too hot, am I going to be too cold? I have no idea. I don't know exactly what questions they're going to ask, but I've got all of this ready. I feel like I am as prepared as I can be, and that is all I have got control over. And just really trying to regulate with yourself exactly what you have got, exactly what you can't do anything about. And it's all about that reassurance of you've done as much as you can. And knowing yourself and any strategies, like you say, about developing strategies that can help and, you know, getting into good practice of those. So one of the things I would do in the night before exam was have a bath, because I know that can't, you know, that was a relaxing thing. And then in the morning, I'd make sure I was up early, that I'd eaten, that I'd got some water to go, you know, got my bag packed, etc. And you just kind of remove any of the little pressures and trigger points along the way, to the point where you get there. And then, like I say, you kind of have that little chat with yourself where you say, right, well, this is this and that is that. I can do things about this, can't do things about that. Have I done as much as I can? Yes. Right. I've just got to go in and
things that you can control. You make sure you make the most of that. I mean, that comes back to what we talk about in the membership in terms of in the preceding year, 6 months, 18 months, however long, the more preparation you do ahead of exams, the more little and often revision rather than that last minute rush and panic, that has to surely, I think, lead to a calmer approach to the exams, because you've done as much as you should. I think a lot of stress does come from probably knowing deep down you haven't quite done as much as you should do.
Yeah.
So there is something students can do about it, but it's easy to say, not so easy to do apparently.
Yeah. Very much so. And what you were saying about preparation there just made me think, like some children and young adults will stand there and go, but I haven't revised that, and I haven't. Well, 5 minutes before you go into the exam, there is nothing that you can do about that. So it's another, if you haven't done certain things, it's kind of putting them to one side for a little bit as well, because I'm realizing that the more you worry about those things, the less you'll be able to focus. So it kind of goes back to the things you can't control, is that if you haven't revised it, at 9:59 when your exam starts at 10 o'clock, there really isn't much else that you can do. That's going to be what it will be. Focus on what you can do something about.
Yeah. And little things like if they do end up in the situation where they are going into school to sit even a mini exam this summer and for then future years. So if you're listening to this later on, I'd advise packing your bag with all of your pencil case and everything for your exams the night before, because I know if it was me otherwise, I'd be lying in bed going, I forgot to put my calculator in my pencil case, and then I wouldn't be able to sleep because I'd be worrying about that, and it'd be 3 a.m. I couldn't get up and go and do it, and I wouldn't sleep properly because it wasn't done. So that controlling what you can control, that's quite a practical step that can be done as well. So
definitely,
occurred to me that might be useful to talk about as well.
Things like exam start times, it sounds like a really daft thing to say, but a lot of students get it all wrong. It's a 9 o'clock start, not a 9:30, for example, and the amount of panic that causes, and they go into Emily's going to tell you a story.
So for my last GCSE exam, which I believe was English literature, I was convinced it was a morning exam. It was my last exam. I was pretty chilled out. Mum and Dad had gone off to work. I was at home. The house phone rings. It's school. Where are you? It wasn't an afternoon exam. It was a morning exam. I'm a 15-minute walk from school. So, how am I going to get myself there? Such a state, honestly. I ended up getting a friend's mum from down the road to drive me to school. And when I got there, I was in such a tiz that they wouldn't even let me start the exam. They're like, no, go sit in this room, just calm yourself down for 10 minutes. And then we'll do it. So long as you're in the room, we know you're supervised. It's okay. You can do that. So
I've forgotten that story. I'm so glad I asked the question.
I didn't get to leave the last exam with everyone else and do the whole finished, because I was a wally basically. So
it's important, isn't it? Like you say.
So the top tip I was about to make was, just because I used to
don't
panic.
Be daft.
Don't be daft. I used to panic that I didn't have the right time. So I would double check. I wouldn't check what was in my diary or whatever. I would check what was on the piece of paper that the school had given me, or if it's an interview, whatever the timing is, whatever the event is, just be absolutely certain that you know how long it takes to get there, how long, just the things you can control. You can, make sure you control. So.
Yeah. And a strategy there, I have a cousin who, how old is he now? Is he 19? He's 19. So going through his GCSEs, my auntie was quite poorly while he was studying. So he missed quite a few of his GCSEs actually, because she was really, really poorly. But I was driving him to and from some of his exams and things like that. And he actually gave me his exam timetable, and I rang him to make sure he was up, to make sure he was moving and everything. So obviously I know parents would do that, but you've got parents who might be working shifts, this, that, and the other. Like you say, parents who go out to work, presuming that you're going to be fine for the day. But I would maybe make yourself accountable to another person and say, can you just make sure that I am on with it? And that's another prevention strategy, another thing you can control. But that's one I just thought of that might be quite useful as well, actually.
Yeah, it's much like our daughter at the moment, who wants to make sure she doesn't miss the start of the school day because she's slept in or something. So she has 3 separate alarms in the morning. It's like, they wake up now. And then there's the, are you awake yet? About 10 minutes later. And then, seriously, you said you were awake last time. Are you really awake? The third thing.
I mean, I'm 26 and I still do that. So, I have 3 alarms in the morning for the exact same reason.
Nice. She's also, and I'm just sharing this because I thought this was amazing, she's also got 2 other alarms set during the day. She's got them for the start of each lesson because some are live and some aren't. But she's got a random one at 12 that goes off and says, "You're awesome," just to remind her every day. It's like, that's genius. That. And I totally want to do that. And then at the end of the school day, there's another one that says, "You've done awesome work today. Well done." Love it.
That is brilliant.
Right?
She did
that is brilliant. Yeah. What a motivation strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love so that. There you go. That's my top tip for everyone. Go set yourself some alarms to remind yourself how awesome you are on a regular basis. Because somebody needs to.
When the "You're Awesome" alarm goes off at 3 o'clock, soon after, she's down the stairs trying to beat chocolate out of us, or some sort of pudding, or
"I'm so awesome, I deserve this."
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? I mean, I would do the same thing. I would be looking for the treats all the time.
The puppy dog eyes on as well. I always give in. It's ridiculous.
Indeed.
Brilliant.
If anyone's listening wants to put some questions in the chat, obviously, please do. I mean,
yep. And then we've got a couple more, I think, that we had. I'm just looking through my question list.
Well, I was going to ask. I had heard a small amount of stress is a good thing in terms of performance. So if we go back to the exams again, is that true? So it keeps you on your game. True or false?
No, I would say true. For the people who, people deal with it in different ways, don't they? So stress is definitely a good thing for people who possibly feed off that pressure and feed off that adrenaline and really kind of take that and go, right, and it motivates them and fires them up, and it, and then you move on to the next thing, and that might be a bit stressful. And so it can definitely send people on a very upward spiral quite quickly of, I've got this, I can do this, I've got this, I can do this, and keep going up and up and up. But similarly, obviously, it can have the exact opposite effect as well. And most people tend to find it a less rewarding response than a more rewarding response. I mean, if you take, I roller skate competitively, so I always tend to use this as an example because I've been doing it for 16 years and I still stand there and go, what have I done? What have I done? Why have I told myself that this was a good idea? And you're standing there in the rhinestones, smiling, thinking, oh, you've done it again. You've properly dropped yourself in it here. And once I've done it, you feel incredible and you come off and you've done a good job and you think, oh, like you do, it definitely helps. But in the lead up to it, it can send you the other way as well. So I definitely think it works in little, small proportionate, rather than throwing yourself in completely at the deep end. That tends to have like a very negative response and you kind of go back the other way. So I would say
regularly myself, just whenever they ask me to are you all right to just be on the news this evening? I'm like, no, I'm okay. And I got this week actually a random, we're doing some homeschooling things on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire in the mornings. Can you do a maths activity that's like fun and engaging? Something I can do over the radio for math? It'll be fun. I mean, something.
Zoom is one thing, the radio is another, really, isn't it, there at that point?
Yeah. I came up a couple of minutes later and she went, Paul, what have I done? What have I done? I've got nothing.
But it was fine. And
she was awesome, obviously.
Fun.
Yeah.
But yeah.
In little chunks, stress is good.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Right, we've got a question. So Vicky says, what strategies would you recommend to help a child in the middle of a panic attack? So the stress has clearly got a little bit too much.
Yeah, it's that crisis point, isn't it? I mean, so children can respond differently. One of the main things I like to do, we call it high five breathing. This is something that I've only learned quite recently, but I really think it's effective. And again, children and young adults mirror you, and then mirroring when they're at that crisis point, they're looking for your responses. And one of the main things that I find really, really useful is to just same level as them. Some children like you to make eye contact with them and kind of say, you can do this, you've got it, and others just want you to be quiet. But the main thing that I tend to model is really slow breathing. So you get your hand and you go in, out, in, out, all the way. And then if they're still not calm, you go back again and back, and you can repeat that for however long it takes. Like I say, some children would like, and young adults and whoever, I mean, I've done this with adults, it works with anybody. They're looking, anybody in crisis is looking at you, and it's their brain screaming out for, I need something to copy because I don't know how to respond. So you've got, you breathe in. Some children would like you to sit quietly. Some children would want you to talk to them and reassure them, but being on their level and just kind of leveling the playing field almost. If you're standing over them, that's a bit too authoritative. If there's a child sat on the chair and you go to crouch down on the floor next to them, they're not looking at you, so it's difficult for some, so just being on eye level, deep breathing, repeat that for literally as long as it takes. I mean, some children you can get to 5 and they're fine, others you can be on about 30 before they start to settle, but it's they're looking for that model, so you model what you want, what you want them to do, basically.
Thank you. So hopefully that's helpful there, Vicky.
Yeah, hopefully.
I like it. I've not heard that before. So,
yeah. All right, then. So to kind of sum up, I guess, have you got kind of maybe 3, but I'll leave it to you, top tips for managing your stress?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of like thinking about exams and things like that, obviously, because I know that's the pressures that a lot of our listeners, children and young adults, will be starting to feel now, is preparing for that task and being as prepared as possible, thinking about how much you can control and doing as much as you can for those things, starting early, like you say, on preparation, so not leaving things till the last minute. I mean, some people will say they work better with a short deadline and under stress, and it works probably most of the time, but you can't do your whole life at the last minute because it starts to have really negative effects on your health generally. So preparing in advance, preparing yourself in advance and talking yourself through what you have got control of, what you haven't got control of, and just understanding that it's a really natural process. Nobody is ever going to go through their life not stressed. So when you feel it starting, you think, what can I do about this? And having that self-talk and reassurance as well of, trying to get yourself to understand what you've got control of, what you've not control of. And I wrote something, and I've got some notes, and I've just seen something that I haven't thought about yet. One of the things that I wrote down was, especially with children and teenagers, is you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. So as a parent, there is only so stressed you can get about the situation, because again, they're feeding off you. And if they aren't ready to hear it, they're just not listening. And a lot of it has to come from them. So you can guide them, you can model what you want them to see, you can point them in as many directions and the strategies and resources and things, but it has to come from them. So that's just something to be mindful of as well, that parents might find useful when dealing with exam stresses and just, parenting stresses in general, really.
Yeah, that's really important, I think, because we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves to fix everything as parents. It's just your instinct. So, yeah. Useful, very useful. Yes.
No,
you looked like you were about to jump.
No. Just, I think everything that we were going to ask. Is there anything that we've things that we should have brought up that we haven't? Anything else that springs to mind?
I mean, the only thing I would kind of add in is obviously, how we were saying about the pressures of work, the pressures of the real world, and children and young adults coming to you with things that they're finding stressful. Unfortunately, obviously, services within schools and beyond were stretched to begin with, and then they're obviously even more stretched now. They're running on minimal staff, minimal funding. Some staff are being pulled to other schemes to pick those up, and like CAMS struggle, and there's a lot of referrals aren't happening because the staff aren't able to come into schools and things like that. But I think that these kinds of networks and the whole kind of system that you guys have got going on is absolutely incredible. And so reach out to those guys and just speak to other people, because as parents, I mean, like I say, I tutor. I tutor 15 children a week. And how many am I on now? I'm nearly there, so I must be on about 10 or 11. And I've had 4 parents cry on me this week saying that they cannot do this. And that's at primary school level. saying they can't work from home and tutor and this and that and the other. And school services are stretched, yes, but there are other people out there who can help, like you guys. And more so than anything, just talk to somebody about it, whether it's on behalf of your child or whether it's for you. Just reach out, because there are people there. Don't feel like you've got nowhere to turn, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll probably add to that our community. So we've got the Parent Guide to GCSE community, which is a Facebook group, and the Parent Guide to Post 16 community. They are parents who are going through the exact same stresses and things as you. There will always be someone on there who will understand where you're coming from. Even if you just need to hop on there and vent, that is what we're all there for. So please do use the resource, because you really don't have to do this on your own.
Definitely.
Thank you. Right, super, awesomely helpful. Hopefully answered lots of questions. Vicky says thank you for the answers about panic attacks. So yeah, massively appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.